Welcome to Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. On this podcast, we journey through the devastating experience of the death of a child. Grief is seldom discussed openly in our culture, and the death of a child makes people feel even more uncomfortable. We approach the topic openly and honestly, speaking to people who have lost loved ones and experts who help care for them. Whether you are a parent experiencing loss or someone who wants to support another going through this tragedy, this podcast strives to offer hope and help.
Welcome to episode number 284 of Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. I'm Marcy Larson, Andy's mom. Today I have the pleasure to introduce you to Amanda. Amanda is Hollis's mom, and I really enjoyed talking to her, and I know you will just love listening to her today. I do also want to take a minute to tell you some exciting news that I haven't announced on the podcast, but you may have seen it a little bit on my social media accounts. So if you follow Always Andy's Mom on Facebook or Instagram, you may know this already. But for those of you who don't, I was invited to be a part of an anthology. So I am an author in a chapter of a book. That book is called Threads of Gold. It is the original dream of Kyle and Betty Mertens, who shared their daughter on the podcast quite some time ago now. But I am really excited about this. I think it's a beautiful book. It really just talks about getting through your toughest struggles and toughest times. There are a lot of child loss stories in it. And the release of the book will be on March 19th. So write that down. Keep track of that. On March 19th, I'm going to want everyone to go on Amazon because for, I think, just 24 hours, maybe 48 hours, it will be only $1.99 for this amazing book in its digital copy. So I want everybody to be able to get that. There will be different codes depending on what country you're coming from. So you can click on the right button for that. But please watch for that. I am really excited about it, and we really want to get a big buzz and have a lot of purchases on that first day that it comes out. Also, I can talk a bit about the next live stream with Gwen. That live stream will be on Monday, March 3rd. Should be at 7 p.m. Eastern time, but perhaps that will change as we get a little bit closer. I think that will be the time. The topic is yet to be decided, so if you have an idea for a topic of something you'd like to hear Gwen and I talk about, just email me. Email me at marcy@andysmom.com. And know that I love emails of stories too, so if you want to share your story with me, just with me privately, or if you want to arrange to be on the podcast, email me. I really, really do love to hear from people. Right now, I just want you to sit back and listen to Amanda, Hollis's mom. Thank you so much, Amanda, for coming on the Always Andy's Mom podcast today.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I know you wrote in your email that you just always love the opportunity to talk about Hollis.
Yes.
So this is getting you a little bit bigger platform.
Yes, definitely. I have been wanting to share his story. So
this is a way you get to do it. You get to share with, people from all around the world. So this will be pretty cool. So why don't we start out by just talking about Hollis? Because Hollis had a complicated beginning.
Yes.
A very uncomplicated middle, and then a complicated end. So let's talk about that complicated beginning a little bit.
Hollis was a surprise.
Oh.
I found out I was pregnant very shortly after my younger sister found out she was pregnant, which was also a surprise.
Oh, really?
And yes.
Oh, that's crazy.
I know.
Was Hollis your first or?
My second. I had a 1-year-old.
So your second. Oh, you had a 1-year-old. So you just.
Yeah.
You were not quite thinking it was time yet to have the second.
No, but I was really excited because me and my sister are so close and they were only about 2 weeks away for due date.
Oh, fun.
Yeah. So we actually had planned to do kind of like a gender reveal type thing at dinner together.
Uh-huh.
for the 2 babies, and I was 2 weeks ahead of her. So I had my 20-week anatomy scan, and she just did one of the little, boutique things to find out the gender so that we could do it at the same time. And while we were doing the anatomy scan, I noticed that it was taking a really long time for the ultrasound technician. And she just kept saying, "You can't get a very good image of his heart." She just kept trying. And then at the end, I remember she kind of was just like, "Okay, well, the doctor will talk to you about everything now." We had to kind of go in the waiting room. And it was at that point that I just was like, I just don't feel good about that.
Yeah.
She didn't really,
Yeah.
didn't seem cheerful. It just seemed weird.
Yeah.
So when we met with my doctor, I'll never forget, she handed me a sticky note. It said DORV on it, which is double outlet right ventricle, and then VSD, so ventricular septal defect. And she just handed it to me and she said, "I don't know if this is what he has, but I feel like it is. You're just going to have to be referred to a specialist."
Yeah.
So, I'm crying. My husband's like dry heaving in the trash can. I can tell the doctor's just doesn't know what to do. She tells us to take as much time as we want. But yeah, that's when we first found out about his heart defects, was at that 20-week anatomy scan.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we were pretty scared after that.
Yeah.
Didn't know much about any of those, heart defects or anything.
Were you able to meet with someone pretty quickly, or did it take a bit?
Yes, we were, but we went to maternal fetal medicine, but then we had to wait to see the cardiologist until his heart was a little bit bigger. So that was probably,
Right.
I think, somewhere maybe around 28 weeks.
Okay.
So we did have to wait a little bit to get confirmation as far as what the actual issue was, which the doctor was correct. He did have double outlet right ventricle.
Yeah.
So that's where both of the main arteries come out of the right ventricle.
Yeah, because it should be the pulmonary artery should come out of the right side of the heart.
Yes.
And the aorta should come out of the left side of the heart. But in this defect, both of those big vessels come out of the right ventricle, which is not good either, because in general, that's that's the weaker of the two, right? Usually your left ventricle is kind of the one doing most of the work. Now, the VSD that they explained in there, that's actually good, because if you didn't have the VSD to be able to flow from one side to the other, it wouldn't even be thing that you'd survive in utero with. You've got to be able to flow back and forth. So that part was part of the way that they compensate.
Yeah.
By having it. But obviously all your blood's just mixed up, the blood with oxygen and the blood without oxygen after being born.
Mm-hmm.
And everything's just coming out the same.
Yeah. So he had that. Yeah. The great arteries were side by side. He also, his aortic arch was too small. They had to repair that. And then I think he even had maybe a hole in I think he had an atrial septal defect as well. He had a lot of different things.
Yeah. Complex heart.
They were all going to be addressed. Yes, it was very complex. But we felt, pretty hopeful. We had met with the surgeon and all that. I felt like we had a good plan in place. The plan was for a quote unquote total repair. So he would be totally repaired, but that doesn't mean, down the line things don't need to be tweaked or anything like that. But
right.
The plan was for everything to be repaired in this surgery.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So he had his surgery on day 2. So the children's hospital was connected to where I gave birth by a pedway. So we were able to kind of, be in both places while I was healing from a C-section. The surgery was really, really long. It was probably 12 hours long. And at one point, the nurse who had been updating us came in and she said that the surgeon couldn't take him off of the heart-lung bypass machine,
mm-hmm.
which I knew was terrible. And I also knew that a lot of complications arise the longer that they are on that machine. So
Yeah.
always knew I wanted him off of it as quickly as possible. And then, of course, she came in and said, we can't take him off of it. So that's when the surgeon ended up putting in like an artificial valve. It was, I think, right ventricle to pulmonary artery.
Right pulmonary artery. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, conduit. Yeah.
Yeah, to the pulmonary artery. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's what was able to, kind of bypass whatever issues there were there so that he could, get off the machine. By the time we were able to see him, he looked terrible. They had to leave his chest plate open. Surgery was so long and they were worried about swelling. And then we were in the hospital for 6 weeks, and it felt like any little tiny thing that could happen happened. So it was so many different complications. I mean, he ended up having like his arterial line that went through his groin ended up getting like infected somehow. And they said it was like necrotizing fasciitis.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Yeah. So they were having to like take him up to the OR to debride the wound, and we're having to see like if it's affected other organs, and couldn't get him off the ventilator because he's having to take these trips to the OR because of this wound in his groin. And because of that, he's on pain medicine. So then, we're struggling to get him off the pain medicine because now he's dependent on it. Then by the time we were all able to get him off the breathing tube, we realized that he had like a paralyzed diaphragm. So then he had to have surgery for the paralyzed diaphragm.
Wow.
And then by the time it was time for him to try and start to eat, he would aspirate when he would take in any of the milk. So then that pushed us back another week too, because he had to pass his swallow study. It was just so much.
It was thing after thing after thing. I tell you, you had like every complication you could possibly have.
Yeah, it really, I wish I could say that I was positive during that time, but I just was so angry every day, just wishing,
Yeah. Knife, it just didn't feel fair. Yeah.
No, it really didn't. And I just felt like I imagined, heart surgery, but then he recovers, and, recovery is just kind of like every day you get better and better.
And then, but you don't. Right. You don't.
And it's just not true. No, it's not true at all. So
It reminds me very much of my son Valeriano's kidney transplant. So he had a kidney transplant, which should be really pretty quick. They said it was going to be like 5 days in the hospital, and it was like over 2 weeks. And it was hard because you see kids come in, like one he had a transplant on the same day as one kid. Well, he left, and then somebody came in and got his transplant a few days after him, and he left. And it was just like all these people are coming in and getting transplanted and leaving.
Yeah,
like when did we leave?
Yeah,
and then we left, and then we went back, and then we left, and then we went back.
Yes,
it was like 3 hospitalizations in 2 months, and just it just feels like that. I mean, I totally feel you with that. Just thing after thing, and. Oh, he shouldn't have been on that medication because that's.
Yeah. All of that stuff. I know. Like
I can feel your frustration, and then it brings me back to that time when I was feeling that mom frustration of this is not right.
I know. Yeah, it's hard. You just think that it's gonna be like linear healing, where just every day it's slow but steady. Gradually getting better, and it just was not like that. And I just wanted him home so badly, hated all of that. And when we went home, the groin wound was really like the biggest thing. Like when he came home, he had like a wound back.
Oh my word.
And then shortly after that, I was having to do like dressing changes of the wound at home. But besides that, like everything was pretty good with his heart.
Yeah.
So minimal medications, nothing was weird, feeding was fine for the
Oh,
most
good.
part. Yeah,
Good.
it really was not too bad.
That can be a huge struggle with heart kids. I mean, huge struggle. Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, he was small and did feel like, the feeding was really important for us. And we did struggle once he got a little bit older and he started solids.
Mm-hmm.
He just had like a very sensitive gag reflex and he was vomiting all the time. And
Mm-hmm.
it was right around when he was 1.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we couldn't get into an appointment with the gastro for months,
Yeah.
and then he ended up just outgrowing that as well, which I'll, attribute to my husband because he, kept trying and helping him and that kind of stuff. But yeah, after all those things, we were smooth sailing.
Yeah.
When he was actually 9 months old, I found out I was pregnant with my daughter.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I know. She was a surprise too. But I
Uh-huh.
was so happy at that time. I was like, okay, I have my 3.
Yeah.
I'm pregnant with my first girl and like the family is complete. We're
Right.
done, like this is perfect. And it was perfect.
Well, and you were really through the hard stuff with Hollis by then, right? I mean, he
Yes.
was doing good then.
Yeah. Yeah, he was. He was doing great. We had gotten in, I mean, now at this point, the only medication that he even was on was like a half of a baby aspirin, to decrease risk of clotting because of that.
And right, and I was going to say, because that's just because of his valve that he was on that.
Yes, just because of the valve. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, just, I mean, smooth sailing, normal life. It just felt like, I'm like, I can't believe we went through all that stuff in the beginning. Like that was wild.
Mm-hmm.
That was my trying time
Yes.
and I got through it,
Yes. Yes.
Now I've got, all my kids are close in age. Like, it's just perfect, we got past that.
Right. Right. You got through it. Your hard stuff is done.
Yeah. So at this point, we're, every 6 months we go and get an echocardiogram with his cardiologist. And they're monitoring because that artificial valve, because obviously it does not grow with the heart.
Right.
So we've known since the very beginning that would need to be replaced.
Right. Because those hearts are bitty. I mean, they are so, so tiny. It's crazy how tiny they're. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So small. Yes, I know. So by the time he was getting to be 4, that's when we decided it was time for surgery.
Yeah.
But I had not noticed anything weird at home that, they always ask.
Right. So let's talk about his personality a little bit. So 4-year-old Hollis. I want to hear about 4-year-old Hollis.
Okay. 4-year-old Hollis was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
He loved Sonic the Hedgehog,
Okay.
and at our house, he would get all the way naked and he would wear just socks, and then he would put socks on his hands and he would just sprint through the house like as fast as he could. And it was so funny because he was so little and it was like, how did you take off all your clothes and put on these socks? Like they're on your feet and they're on your hands.
Oh, that is so funny.
And it was just
I love that.
hilarious. Yeah. He was really funny. He loved to hang out with his cousins. He loved to hang out with his brother and sister. He loved to dress up, but he was like a menace when he dressed up. He always wanted to be like Darth Vader or Spider-Man.
Yeah.
So he'd come like creeping into rooms, like wanting to kind of like spook you as he was dressed up.
Oh, that reminds me of my Peter. I don't know. That kid, he always wanted to scare me. It seemed like.
Yeah.
And, the other ones would be like the Jedi and Princess Leia. And then he's Darth Vader.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then it was funny too because like, he had all those struggles with eating, but then he became our eater. So I loved watching him eat because it was almost like he would just like shovel the food into his mouth, like cheeseburger or, like any of that stuff. It was just like shoveling it into his mouth. And it was so funny. Yeah. Hollis was really a lot of fun.
Yeah. It sounds like it. It sounds like it.
But I will say this, he was a daddy's boy.
Oh, really? Okay.
He did not. And he never hit it. I would always joke and be like, who do you like better? Like, you like me better, right? And he would just shake his head no. And he would go, and he would just point his finger and say, dad, dad. And that's okay, I'll let my husband have that one.
Yeah, a little stinker, but yeah, okay.
But it was very cute. He really loved his dad. We'd go out to eat. And the other two would always be like, we want to sit by mom. We want to sit by mom. And he'd be like, I want to sit by dad.
Oh, that's
So,
so
yeah,
sweet. Dad must have loved that too.
he did. He absolutely did.
Because so often kids do, like, well, mom or whatever.
Mhm.
So it's really cool when it's not.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So, yeah, he was just silly. Like, he loved Nightmare Before Christmas. That's one of those. Just, he just would be these like characters. And it was just funny. I know he was a good friend, at school. He had his little friends, and his teacher, always would talk to me about, just how sweet he is at school and just the funny things he said.
Oh, super fun.
Yeah,
Love
for
that.
sure.
Love that.
Yeah. But so one of the things we did notice at times was that when he would play with his cousins and his older brother, I did notice that he would get tired quicker than them. And he even had asked us before, like, why do I get tired? They're faster than me and I get tired. And I knew it was probably heart related. And sometimes when he would play really hard, he would say like that he had a stomach ache. And I always felt like maybe that was related as well. Just kind of like pain that he didn't really know how to describe.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, his heart just couldn't quite keep up with that. I mean, they have to obviously put a valve inside that's for an infant heart, and that heart's continue to grow. You can't replace it all the time. It has to be it's one of those things they would have replaced it then. They would have replaced it again later down the road because you couldn't get to an adult size by then either. But still, you don't want to do it all the time.
Exactly. I know. So it's something we watched, but we never had any scary moments with him. He never like passed out or he never, went blue or anything like that. So those were really the only things we noticed at home.
And he was probably in preschool by then too, right?
Yes, he was in preschool.
I was going to say, and I bet the other preschool kids had no idea there's like anything of his.
You know what I mean? No. Yeah. Yeah.
No, he was just like any other kid.
No, he was totally normal. Yes, he was in preschool and we adored his teacher. She taught my older son as well, and she's just amazing. So I just felt so comfortable that kind of like in his last year, that's who his teacher was, because she, would text me and send me so many pictures.
Oh, that's awesome.
I just feel really lucky that kind of was the situation. I work full time, but my husband is like a stay-at-home dad. And so I, now looking back, I'm so happy for that too.
Yeah.
Because he just, he got to just, I feel like, spend all his days here. He was not even 2 years apart from his brother and his sister, just like a unit of little kids running the house, just go do their little preschool. But other than that, they were always together. And he was always together with his cousin, the one that I mentioned earlier that was 2 weeks apart.
Yeah, right. Crazy.
Yeah. They were best friends. So that was always, so fun to see, just kind of them grow up together for a little bit.
So if you want to talk about now what happened, then you certainly can. Yeah.
Yeah. So we knew surgery was coming, and that was fine. I wasn't too worried because I knew that this was a minor procedure compared to what he had.
Right.
Yeah. So, it was like, this is like cake, just replacing that valve versus all of those repairs that he had. Like, I do think now, thinking back, I did have some of those weird thoughts beforehand where, he was turning 4 and then he was going to have surgery 4 days later. And I just remember being like, what? I need to make this birthday good because what if it's his last? And then it's like, why did I just think that? Like, just because he's having,
Yeah.
now it's one of those kind of like just mom feelings where it's like, did you sense it?
Yeah, did you kind of know? Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Surgery went fine. I do remember kind of shortly after he had gone back for surgery, the surgeon came in and he told us that he made like an incision in his neck just in case they were needing to place him on ECMO because where his valve was so close to like the middle where they were going to have to like get into the chest.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know if that was just because they were worried that things might go wrong. I didn't really ask a lot of questions. I just remember crying because I felt so upset that they sliced into him again when he already had so many scars. And I just felt sad that he was going to have an additional scar.
Yeah.
And I also knew that I did not want him to be on ECMO.
Right.
So I didn't even like hearing that. I was like, what would, Anyway, surgery went fine.
Mm-hmm.
Afterward, we went into his post-op room. I remember the nurse was looking over his medical chart and just was talking to us saying, like, wow, like this is so amazing. I'm looking through his medical records. I can't believe he doesn't have any like secondary issues from all that he went through in the beginning. And I was like, I know, me too. I remember texting my sisters. I was like, sometimes I can't even believe we got so lucky with Hollis. Like, I really feel like things were really, like, probably bad in the beginning.
Yeah.
So none of the doctors even had anything to say. They'd come in the room, they'd say, everything looks great. He's moving forward. We were just basically waiting for him to come off sedation and the pain meds, and he was going to be able to eat.
Yeah.
We got smiles out of him, even through like, the sedation. I was able to like give him some water and everything was fine. So we went to sleep at the hospital with him in the room. And around midnight, I woke up because I heard him and he sounded agitated, which was not abnormal because he had been getting agitated as his pain got worse.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So I kind of opened my eye. I saw the nurse next to him. I almost just went back to sleep because I was like, well, they're just going to give him a little bit more pain medicine and it should be fine. But I decided to get up because I was like, well, maybe I can, kind of help him out and give him a little water.
Help calm him down or something. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. My husband kind of woke up around that time too because he could hear him. He was kind of like moving his body a lot and couldn't or wouldn't really take the water. I did not have any concerns at all. But at that time, I started feeling really nauseated and I also started feeling weak. I was not sure if I was going to have to go to the bathroom and throw up or what was the deal, but I sat down and then that was that for me. I passed out.
You passed out?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I woke up and there's, nurses trying to help me and they're, asking if I need to eat or, and at this point there's tons of doctors in the room. They're all around Hollis. I'm still pretty disoriented. So I'm not really sure what's going on. Like I just, woke up and they kind of moved me over to the bed to lay down. And the nurse that was getting my vitals was like, she asked me, do you normally have a really low heart rate? And I was like, I don't know. I mean,
yeah,
it's not normally high or anything. She was like, okay, because it's really low right now. If you need to go to the ER, you'll have to go basically walk over to the adult hospital because they can't treat me there. And I was like, well, absolutely not. Things are going crazy here. Pretty much by the time I was able to sit up, I could hear in the room that they said he doesn't have a pulse. We need to start CPR. And I just stared out the window in the back. I had no idea. I just was like, there's no way this is happening. And I mean, my husband was like screaming, and I was like, I mean, they'll like CPR will help. They'll get it back. Like his heart will start beating again. And they did get it back for a very short amount of time, but then it stopped again. And at that point, that's when they were like, you and your husband have to leave the room. Like, we're going to have to figure things out. And I know they continued CPR for a while. We kept getting updates.
Yeah.
And it was just, they're still performing CPR. And I just was like, this is terrible. Like, this is absolutely not going to be good. And of course, the irony of it all is just that they had to put him on ECMO in the end, because it just none of it ever came back. So I remember, it's the middle of the night. I just remember calling my mom, and I wanted to be delicate. And I just said, things haven't gone well. And I'm pretty sure that now we would be needing a miracle for Hollis. And really, that was it. The next 2 days were really bad in the hospital because it was a lot of, people coming in to, I know that now that they were coming in to say goodbye, but I do think the doctors were trying to tread lightly. We were waiting to see if he had brain function, but he just didn't.
Yeah, it had just been too long.
Yeah. So, we had to explain to his brother and sister, and it's just one of those sensitive things where I didn't want them to like look back on that moment. And I don't know, I felt like I had to tell them, like, this is your last time, because I didn't want them to ever think back on that moment and me use vague terminology and them not realize that that was the last moment that they were ever going to see him alive.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was pretty much it. This happened in the middle of the night on a Wednesday. On Friday is when we had to just cease care, basically. We just, they took all of the stuff on him, and me and my husband just held him in the bed and just let him.
It's just so horrible. You just, you go in thinking it's just this little blip in the road, right?
Yeah.
The first little valve change out, not a big deal, nothing.
Yeah.
And you've told me since that after autopsy, after everything, they still have not come up with a reason why his heart stopped, right? There's no medical reason that you have ever discovered as to what exactly happened.
Yeah.
And that's hard too.
Yeah.
I think when you don't have an answer.
I know. Well, we looked into it hard. We did the autopsy. I got a lawyer involved to just have, a couple other doctors like look over everything.
Yeah.
And there was no, deviation from the standard of care. So
yeah,
everything was done in a timely manner.
And there were no warning signs either beforehand.
No warning signs.
Just nothing. It's just, I'm sorry. I just like, that's all you can just say is just like, how does this happen? How does this happen?
I know. Yeah. And we met with his surgeon on Friday, and I could just tell, like, by the way he looked, that he was like really, like, he was really, really shocked, and it was really upsetting to him. And he told us, he said before he did that surgery, just he was really worried about it. And then when everything went great, he like felt so happy, like went home and like told his wife, like, this was a really rewarding day. I had been concerned about this case, but like he had checked
Well, probably why they got the ECMO stuff ready and all that, right? The incision.
Yeah,
Because the
yeah,
worry was a little high.
yeah. And so, yeah. And that's one of those things where, you just hear these stories about, it's like, I'm like, well, where was our miracle here?
I
Like,
know.
why didn't, and then now thinking back, I'm like, maybe our miracle was in the beginning. Like, maybe those 4 years that we got with him were, the 4 years we maybe never were going to have.
Yeah, right, right. Maybe you had the miracle at the beginning.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, honestly, you
But
kind of did. You had thing after thing go wrong, and yet he just pulled through and pulled
yeah,
through like amazingly well. I mean, I
I
think of all
know.
the kids that have had heart stuff and they struggle and like I've got a lot of kids in my practice that had very complex heart things and they have learning problems at school, they have
Mm-hmm.
ADD, they
Yeah,
have a lot of stuff and they're just
yeah,
they're never quite able to keep up with
yeah.
kids around them or their siblings or whatever. And I always feel like, they just are, it has an
Mm-hmm.
impact or they
I
never
know.
eat well, like ever.
Yeah,
I got one that's man, he's like a teenager now. And I still
yeah,
cannot get this kid to eat really. And,
yeah.
it just, but
I
yet
know.
Hollis,
Yeah,
maybe he did get the miracle at the beginning because
yeah.
honestly, that's awesome that he did all of that. But
I
it
know.
does,
Yeah,
but that's not the way you see it.
I know. Well, because then I felt so like unlucky because it was like, this like procedure has like a 98, 99% like survival rate from,
Yeah.
just, and it's like, then you start to think like, well, what if, I picked the date, it's like, what if I just picked a different date? You just start to think like
Oh
it,
yeah.
because it almost just feels like the stars aligned in the way we did it not.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like I think every single parent does that one F. Everyone.
I
I talk
know.
I talk to people about it all the time. That's always I always say it doesn't matter. It absolutely
Yeah.
does not matter what your child died from because
Oh,
like you in this case you had zero control. There is
I know.
absolutely nothing
Right.
you possibly could have done
I
that could have
know. I
changed that outcome.
know.
But what do?
Yeah.
Because you're a
Be-
mom, you
yeah.
you do what we all do. Oh, I should
Yeah.
have done this. I mean, mine
Yeah.
is why did I let him go change after soccer practice?
I
I mean, okay,
know.
that's a stupid
Right.
thing. Really, did I want him to go to the
Yeah.
baseball game in sweaty clothes?
Yeah. I know.
No, he didn't want to
Yeah.
go in sweaty clothes. I didn't. He
Yeah.
was in his soccer socks and cleats
I
and whatever. Like,
know.
it would have been ridiculous for me to do that. But yet, that
Yes.
goes through my head like, man, I shouldn't have let him take off that soccer.
I know. Yeah. It really is like that. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, well, what if I just said, I mean,
Yeah,
but then you can play it the other way too,
yeah.
where if you did things differently, maybe things would have been somehow worse, you
Right,
know?
right. Or 4 years before. I mean, 4 years and a
Hmm.
couple days before when he had had that very first surgery,
Yeah.
obviously. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I know. But I just always felt so weird. It was just out of the blue that happened. And I just felt so strange, needing to like post like an obituary and stuff.
Yeah.
And it felt like it painted the picture of like I had, a child who, really struggled and then eventually passed away. And it's like, that's just not, it isn't what happened to me. It's
Yeah.
not what happened to him. And it just felt, you know, off just to, not that it even matters, but, just it's like the story was just so different from what I feel like, anyone who just might hear that I had, a child who passed away while he was born with heart, heart blah blah.
Yep. He was a heart kid. Heart kids die.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And
Yeah. Bah.
and that's not what he was. He was way more than a heart kid. Hmm.
Yeah. So I don't know. That's just kind of where I felt like I had always wanted to just kind of share his story because it just felt different from what I feel like, someone might originally think when they hear that, I have a child who passed away.
Mm-hmm. And who had a heart defect. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So how long now has it been?
It will be 2 years in March.
2 years in March.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So let's talk about that grief journey a little bit, what that's been like for you.
Yeah. So I've done a lot, I feel like, since then. I've had another baby.
Okay.
And he is 9 months. I've had 2 new jobs since then. And then, I don't know, I just feel like relationships with friends have changed.
Yeah.
I've gotten close with different people, new people. But as far as my grief journey goes, I just feel like my coping mechanism is to like turn off.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I feel like my biggest, kind of focus is how do I, take the life that I have now and make sure that I still, intertwine it with the life that I had.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's difficult because I don't want to be a bereaved mom.
Right.
So, but obviously that route gives me a ton of guilt.
Right. Because you are Hollis's mom and you want to be Hollis's mom.
Yes. And I want to be Hollis's mom. And in all of that, I am a bereaved mom,
Right. Mm-hmm.
So it's just been difficult trying to, put the two together, especially with, having new jobs. People don't know me, people don't
Right.
know my past. And then it's like, I don't even want to bring it up because it's like, I'm going to ruin your day. But, the second you ask me about my kids, like, I'm going to ruin your day. And then
Right.
you're never going to ask. You're never going to
Because
ask
what
me
do you say?
again.
What do you say when they ask you how many kids you have?
Well, usually I say 4, and then they want to ask, how old are they? And then that's whenever I have to tell them the bad news.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
I
And
know.
I do. I have 4 kids, but
Yeah.
one is forever 4. So,
Yep. If you don't want to go into it, this is my newest. Okay, my newest thing has been how many kids you have, and of course it's always weird because I have Valeriano, who's my foster son, and whatever. But so I'll say, and a lot of times I cheat and I kind of say 3, and I kind of count Valeriano, but really I'm thinking Andy and whatever. But I might say like, oh, I have 4 kids. My youngest is a freshman in college.
yeah.
And because I go straight for that, and then sometimes that goes on to like, oh, where's he at school or something like that.
Yeah.
And then because then the follow-up question isn't the ages. So
I know.
So anyway, that can work sometimes if you want to say,
Yeah.
you have 4
Yeah.
kids and your youngest is whatever, or
Right.
you're old. They range from there to there. It just depends on whether you want to go there.
I know. I just think that I hate that it's so like taboo though, because it's like,
Yes.
because I've had to normalize it because it's my life. So
Yeah.
I've had to normalize that I have 4 kids. One has passed away.
Yeah.
But I just feel like it's not normal for anyone else, and nobody else wants to hear about that either because it makes them feel sad and it makes them feel scared because they would never want that to happen to them. So it just feels like I'm telling.
Right. And they don't know what to say then after that.
Yeah. So I just wish that it wasn't so taboo because I wish that I could almost like casually just tell you
Right.
that that's my situation without having some big reaction about it.
I 100% agree because
Yeah.
I say that I kind of do that, and the only reason I do that is because sometimes I feel like it's someone that I've met that I don't feel like they deserve to know.
Yeah.
Like I don't even think I like you very much. You definitely don't deserve to know my stuff. And but if it's a coworker that you're going to work with,
Yeah.
it's going to come up, and if you don't say it, it ends up being kind of weird.
I know, and that's the problem too. Is like, then it's like, oh, well, like we've worked with her for half the year and she never mentioned,
Right, and we didn't even know. Yeah, I know. Then they feel almost hurt.
Yeah.
And
I know.
So it's very strange. So we're doing this interview today. 2 days ago, Valeriano became a U.S. citizen. Okay, very exciting.
Okay, that's awesome. Yes.
He got to, swear the oath. It was a huge ceremony. I left work
Yeah.
for a little bit to go.
Uh-huh.
I had pictures, and there were people whom I've worked with for like 5 years.
Yeah.
There was a woman who said, "How is that young man associated with you?"
Oh gosh.
And I said, "Well, he's my son." Oh, I didn't know that. And you know why they don't know that? Because they don't want to talk to me about my family.
Yeah.
Because I'm the one with the dead kid. So that means they don't hear about my family at all, right?
Yeah.
And Valeriano, when he was younger, as a teen, he used to be a patient in the office. So people that have been there a long time know.
Yeah.
But he's 26 now, so he's gone out of the PD world here for 6-7 years. So if you were hired at the office in that, you don't know that I have a Guatemalan son. And I feel like if Andy was not dead, they would know, because we would have had a conversation that they would have asked me about my family. But I think right away, everyone tells them that I have a son who died, right?
Well, I know. And that's like
that just happens. Everybody knows that.
No. I know. So that's why I definitely sometimes am like, I feel like people are maybe intentionally like not asking me, because a few people that do know probably have already told them, like,
right, already told them. And so it's going to be like that. It's going to be like that with you, Amanda. People are going to know nothing about your family because they're so afraid to ask you about your family. Like big, awesome things like this can happen. And people had no idea. Yeah. Because they just hadn't ever asked,
I know.
It's just kind of sad.
It is. It's sad. I mean, all of it is.
But it's sad that we're taboo.
Yeah.
It's sad that we can't talk about our kids.
No, I agree.
Because we should be able to talk about them all. You should be able to talk about all 4 of those kids equally.
Yeah, no, for sure. And also, it's like taboo to even just like say that you have one that like passed away. But it's like, I'm not even getting into like, I mean, you want to know about my trauma? Like, I'm not. I could tell you some traumatic things that I've witnessed. I'm not even getting into that.
Right. Right.
So.
You want to hear about me watching my son CPR being done to my son? I can tell you about that.
I can tell you some deep, dark things. This is the lightest thing I'm telling you.
Right. I think that too. Like at the office, like no one knows that. No one knows the deep, dark awfulness. I don't tell people that.
Yeah. And I do think that's one of the things too. Like I just think about often with like bereaved like parents is like, surface level is like they have a child that passed away, but like most people don't know that like the things that they saw
that you can't unsee
are so bad, just like
you shouldn't have to see your child like that. I mean, no one should.
Yeah, just, you see things that are just not, I mean, it goes so deep. But I don't know. That's just the life.
Yeah.
The life we live, the life we're living.
Well, and I think about you two talking about your grief journey, and you've been so incredibly busy, when with all the kids and, newborn again since then.
Yeah.
I think it can be in some ways difficult to grieve.
Yeah,
right?
I agree. But I also do think it's probably like a defense mechanism for me to just,
could be,
I'm busy, and I'm able to really, like I said, I'm able to shut off. So I'm able to really be like in whatever moment. So, like when I'm at work, like I'm just like at work, hanging out with coworkers or like, and I just am not dwelling on things. Because if I did, I'd be so sad,
Yeah.
But I know it's important. So it's one of those things that I feel like I'm trying to kind of be a little bit more like intentional of.
That's what I was going to ask. If there are times when you when you open up the box. Are there times that you do?
Yes, and we talk about him in my house all the time. We always like encourage the kids to talk about him. I would never want them to forget like any of their little moments with him. Obviously, my husband's really supportive and we both talk about him too. I've got really close with my whole family. But it just can be hard to talk about them because it just makes you so sad.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just, like I've gotten accustomed to seeing the pictures that I have taken of him on my phone. But when someone sends me a picture or video of him that I hadn't seen, it just destroys me. It's like I'm so happy that now I'm getting to see that, but it's just
Because it's
like,
like a new memory. Mm-hmm.
but those will take my breath away. I'm like, I wasn't expecting to see him. I didn't know this existed. Like,
Especially if you're like at work or you're like in a setting where you're not thinking about it, it's really hard.
oh yeah. Yeah, yeah. Oh, it hits you so hard.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. I'm glad
Yeah.
people are doing that though. I mean, it's one of those things
Mhm.
that it's good to have it done.
Yeah.
It just can
Yeah.
be difficult in the moment
Yeah.
when you're not prepped for it.
Yeah. Well, it's like even my husband, like I said, he's a stay-at-home dad, so he's got tons and tons of pictures and videos that I haven't ever personally seen. And, my mom has a million too, even my sister, her daughter and him. So yeah, it's nice to get those and see those. But they're hard. They're hard to see.
Do you have any of the Sonic? The running Sonic with the hand? Yeah. I may have to. You may have to send one of those to me. That may have to make the video. I don't know. I like it.
It was so funny. He would just around the house, like be running like fast as he can. He would. It was shoes and socks on his feet,
Okay, so you could run
and
faster
then
in the shoes
and then just socks
on his
on the
hands.
hands
Yes.
because Sonic wears those little white gloves.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, yeah, very cute.
Well, anything else you really felt like you wanted to share about Hollis today or that you wanted to tell all the bereaved parents out there?
I guess the only thing I can think of is just that, I know it's so hard. Every day is so hard. But you just have to think about, the reason that you're wanting to move forward. You just have to put it all into perspective that this terrible thing has happened. There are still good things here for you that you need to live for, that you need to be happy for. And that I remember I started to get into kind of listening to people who have had near-death experiences.
Uh-huh.
And one was like, I don't know, she was probably in her 20s and she had a near-death experience where she was like in a coma and she remembers, she kind of like saw death. Death wanted her to come. She wanted to go, but she remembered being like pulled back because she was like, I can't go now. Like my mom would be so sad if I went. And she ended up, recovering. And I just think about our loved ones that did pass away. And maybe they thought that too, but it was their time.
Yeah.
And I would never want them to think,
that mom's not going to make it. Yeah.
that they're the reason for all, yes, that they're the reason for all my sadness. I don't know what they were thinking at the very end of their life, but I just would never, want them to even take on any of that responsibility.
Well, and when you're raising these other kids now too, you're raising 3 other kids, you don't want them to have led a sad childhood.
Yeah.
Right?
For sure.
And in a sad home. I mean, they are in a grieving home and they do know pain in ways that other kids don't, But in some
Yeah.
ways, I think that can lead to them having more compassion for others
Yeah.
as they grow.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I mean, they can feel joy and see joy, and you can have a lot of joy in
Yeah.
a grieving house all at the same time, and not have it just be overwhelmingly sad all the time, because that I don't
Yeah.
think would be fair to them.
No, I agree. And I feel like if anything, I just would want, Hollis to be watching us and having fun, having moments.
Yeah.
I don't know what happens after we pass away. I don't know. But if there is, an afterlife, if he is with us and watching us, which I hope and like to believe, then I would want him to be, seeing us happy and not feel like he, was the reason for the destruction of everything, like I feel like he fought so hard. Like I'm proud of him,
Yeah.
You fought so hard. I'm proud of you,
Yeah.
buddy. Like I'm
And
not
you want
disappointed.
him to be proud of you too,
Yeah.
right?
So I don't would never want him to feel, like he, like I said, I'm proud of him. He was so strong. He's always been so strong, and he was up until the very end,
Mhm.
just I
Mhm.
don't know.
Yeah.
Life is finite. So
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing, Hollis. I really appreciated talking to you today, Amanda.
yeah, of course, I'm, glad to talk about him, and,
Yeah.
I love him and I miss him. And I know all the other parents on this podcast feel the same exact way about
Mhm.
their
Mhm.
little
I sure
baby.
do. I sure do.
So yeah, just happy to share my story. My main goal was to kind of share his side of things and what actually happened, but also just, I feel like after it happened, I searched so much to not even just find parents who had lost a child, but to just find that specific story that felt similar to mine,
Mhm.
So, and the only way you can do that is to get your story out there
Yeah.
for people to find. So,
Right. And if you feel like you want to connect with Amanda, email me. You can email me,
mhm.
and I can forward that right on to Amanda.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
all
Yeah.
right. Thanks again.
All right. Thanks. You have a great day.
Thanks for listening. If you found this helpful and would like to support the podcast, please leave a 5-star rating and comment. To help financially, you can type Andy's Mom, one word, to the number 53555. This provides a link to GiveButter, which allows donations through PayPal, Venmo, Apple Pay, or credit cards. GiveButter will provide a receipt of your tax-deductible donation. Or you can visit the donation page at andysmom.com/donate. Always Andy's Mom is a registered 501c3 and can receive donations through Thrivent Financial and Benevity. Marcy loves hearing from listeners. Please feel free to reach out to her via email at marcy@andysmom.com or on the Instagram or Facebook Always Andy's Mom accounts. Sign up for the email list to get weekly episode links as well as pictures of Marcy's guests and their children. Together, let's work to inspire hope, one day at a time.